You see it everywhere these days. I mean, it's in those trendy golden lattes at the coffee shop. It's
Coloring your curry.
exactly coloring your curry. It's in smoothie bowls. And for a massive chunk of the population, it is sitting in your medicine cabinet right now in a little plastic bottle. Turmeric. It is effectively the golden child of the wellness world.
Quite literally the golden child. Given the pigmentation, it's pretty hard to miss.
It is, and we take it because we're told it's the answer to, inflammation, joint health, general longevity. It has this incredible reputation. But here's the thing that actually kept me up last night after I finished reading through the packets for today's deep dive. When you look at that bright orange powder or that capsule,
Right.
how do you actually know it's turmeric?
Or perhaps more concerningly, how do you know it's only turmeric?
Yes. Because, as we are going to find out today, the journey from a root in the ground in India to a pill in your hand is, well, it's essentially the Wild West. There are so many points where things can go wrong.
Intentionally or accidentally.
Exactly. But apparently there is a sheriff in town. Or maybe a very strict librarian with a high-tech mass spectrometer.
That is a very vivid, if slightly terrifying, way to describe the United States Pharmacopeia. But the analogy actually holds up really well.
We're sticking with it then. Today, we are deep diving into a brand new guide. It was released just yesterday, February 26, 2026, by Laurent Fabian of Ingredientsage. It is titled A Comprehensive Guide to USP Certified Turmeric. And look, I know...
People hear that and tune out.
Right. Certification standards sounds like the driest topic on earth. I can practically hear your eyes rolling through the speakers, but when you realize this is the only thing standing between you and potentially swallowing lead, arsenic, or, yellow sawdust...
It stops being dry and gets relevant very quickly.
So our mission today is to decode the hieroglyphics on the back of your supplement bottle. We're going to move past the vague marketing fluff.
Things like high quality and all natural.
Yeah, we're moving past that and understanding the hard science of what USP certified actually means.
This is crucial because the supplement industry does not operate with the same oversight as pharmaceuticals. People assume it does. They assume there is a government agent checking every single batch before it ships.
But there isn't.
There absolutely isn't. So when you see that USP mark, it's telling you a very specific story about identity, purity, and potency that most other bottles simply cannot tell.
Okay, let's unpack this. First off, we need to define the entity itself. What exactly is the USP? Because I think a lot of people do assume it's a government agency like a branch of the FDA or something.
It is a very common misconception. The USP, the United States Pharmacopeia, isn't a government policeman. They don't have handcuffs or badges.
Yeah.
They are an independent, scientific, standard-setting body.
Okay.
Think of them less as the police and more as the architects of quality. They create the scientific benchmarks, the blueprints, essentially, that define what a medicine or a dietary supplement should be.
So they write the rule book.
They write the rule book, and critically, they offer third-party validation. This is really important in a crowded marketplace where everyone is just shouting marketing claims.
Yeah, you see brands screaming, purest on earth or maximum strength on the label.
Right, but without any real evidence. USP verification is the neutral, science-driven referee that steps in and says, okay, let's prove it.
And the source material points out that this aligns perfectly with this massive macro trend we're seeing right now called clean label. We saw this with protein powders a few years back, and now it's hitting botanicals hard.
Consumers have really evolved. 10 years ago, you just wanted to know the benefits. Will this help my knee pain?
Right.
Now, consumers are skeptical. They want to know what isn't in there. They demand transparency. Laurent Fabian's guide highlights that USP certification is basically the gold standard for meeting that clean label demand because it forces total transparency. It moves the entire conversation from trust us to here is the proof.
Okay, so the guide breaks this down into 4 pillars of verification. These are the 4 distinct hurdles a turmeric product has to clear to get that stamp.
Correct. And they are incredibly rigorous. Those pillars are identity, purity, potency, and labeling integrity.
Let's start with identity. On the surface, this seems the most basic, right? Identity just means, is it actually turmeric?
It sounds basic. But in the botanical world, identity is incredibly complex. You have to remember, turmeric is a plant. It varies by region, by season, by the type of soil it's grown in.
But a root is a root, isn't it? If I buy a bag of carrots, I know they're carrots.
You know they're carrots because you can see them whole. But in supplements, you're buying a processed powder inside a tiny capsule. And that is where the cheat happens. The industry calls it economically motivated adulteration.
Which is a very polite way of saying ripping people off.
Precisely. Manufacturers cut corners. They might use inferior materials like the spent residue of turmeric after the valuable oil has already been extracted.
Oh, wow.
Or they might use completely different plants that just look like turmeric to bulk up the product and save money.
So I could be buying a bottle of turmeric that's actually 50% yellow starch or some random weed.
Or a related species, like they might use curcuma zitiaria instead of curcuma longa. It looks similar, it tastes somewhat similar, but it doesn't have the same anti-inflammatory properties at all.
That's incredibly deceptive.
It is. That's where USP identity testing comes in. They don't just look at the color or taste it. They use what are called validated reference standards.
Okay, walk us through the science here. How do they actually catch the fakes if they look the exact same to the naked eye?
They use a technique called high-performance thin-layer chromatography, or HPTLC.
Okay, that sounds intense. Break that down for us.
Think of it like a DNA test, but for chemicals. Imagine you have a master fingerprint of the perfect, genetically pure turmeric root. The USP uses this chromatography to separate the material in the bottle at a molecular level. Creates a visual pattern.
Like a graph.
Yes, a spectrum of peaks and valleys.
So they have a perfect graph, and they overlay the sample graph on top of it.
Exactly. If the ridges and loops don't match perfectly, if there are peaks on the graph that shouldn't be there, or valleys where peaks should be, it fails.
Wow.
It doesn't matter if it looks perfectly orange. If the molecular fingerprint doesn't match the reference standard, it is not USP turmeric.
That is fascinating. So it's basically forensic science for plants. They're literally looking for the molecular signature to ensure you aren't paying for yellow sawdust.
And that is just step one.
Right. That handles identity. Now let's move to the pillar that actually scared me a bit when I read the report. Purity. Because the guide mentions things that I definitely do not want in my morning smoothie.
Yes, this is the safety pillar. If identity is asking, is this turmeric? Purity is asking, is this safe to eat? The USP runs a comprehensive battery of tests for contaminants. And we aren't just talking about a little dirt. We are talking about heavy metals. Lead, arsenic, cadmium, mercury.
Lead and arsenic. In a health supplement, it feels totally counterintuitive. I mean, we take these things to get healthy. How does poison get in there in the first place?
It's actually a function of the plant's biology. Turmeric is a rhizome, a root system. It grows underground, and it is remarkably efficient at absorbing nutrients from the soil. But it's not selective.
It just pulls up whatever is there.
Exactly. If that soil is contaminated, say, from industrial runoff, poor irrigation water, or even just high natural occurrences of certain minerals, the root soaks up those heavy metals right along with the good nutrients.
So it essentially bioaccumulates the toxins.
Precisely. And then think about the processing. You take that root, you dry it out, and you concentrate it into a powder or an extract. So you are potentially concentrating the lead and arsenic levels too. What was just a trace amount in the soil becomes a significant amount in your capsule.
Yikes. That is a sobering thought. You're trying to detox your liver, and you're accidentally feeding it concentrated arsenic.
It happens way more often than people realize. And it's not just metals either. The USP also tests for pesticide residues, because this is an agricultural crop after all, and microbiological specs. They are checking for salmonella, E. coli, molds, and aflatoxins.
And how do they catch the heavy metals? I assume this required something a bit more advanced than a microscope.
Oh, much more advanced. They use a method called ICP-MS,
Which stands for?
inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometry.
Okay, I feel smarter just hearing you say that out loud. What does it actually do?
It is basically the Ferrari of analytical chemistry. It uses plasma, which is superheated gas that is hotter than the surface of the sun, to atomize the sample. It breaks it down into individual ions.
Right.
Then a mass spectrometer weighs those ions. It can detect trace amounts of heavy metals at the parts per billion level.
Parts per billion.
To give you a sense of scale, that is like detecting a single drop of dye in an Olympic-sized swimming pool.
That is absurdly precise.
It has to be. The guide emphasizes this because without this specific rigorous testing, you have absolutely no way of knowing if that natural powder is toxic. You cannot taste lead at that level, but your body certainly notices it accumulating over time.
Okay, so let's say we've proven it is turmeric via chromatography, and the plasma mass spectrometer says it doesn't have arsenic in it. That's great, but does it actually do anything for you? That brings us to pillar 3, potency.
Right, and this is where we have to get a little nerdy about the chemistry of the plant itself. Because turmeric isn't just one magic substance.
I expected nothing less. Lay it on us.
When you buy turmeric, You aren't really buying the orange powder for the sake of the powder. You are buying the active compounds inside it, the curcuminoids.
The curcuminoids, I see that word on labels all the time.
But here's the nuance that most people miss entirely. It's not just one thing called curcumin. The USP tests for a complex of 3 specific compounds: curcumin, dimethoxycurcumin, and bivdimethoxycurcumin.
Okay, bis-dimethoxycurcumin. That is a mouthful. Why do we need to distinguish between them? Can't we just measure, total yellow stuff and call it a day?
A generic lab might just do that, measure total curcuminoids, and print the label. But these 3 compounds have different chemical structures and slightly different biological activities. A high-quality turmeric extract has a specific natural ratio of these 3.
And if the ratio is off, what does that mean?
If you just measure the total, a manufacturer could easily spike the product with synthetic curcumin, which is much cheaper to produce in a lab than to grow in a field just to hit that 95% number on the label. But that synthetic version lacks the other 2 naturally occurring compounds.
So the USP verification actually drills down to the ratio of these specific molecules to ensure it's natural.
Yes. They verify that the percentage of each of these specific active ingredients matches exactly what is written on the label. If the label says 95% curcuminoids, USP verifies that it's actually 95% and that it's the right kind of curcuminoid.
And I assume this helps with consistency.
Hugely. That's the other half of potency. Batch-to-batch consistency. If you buy a bottle in February to help with your knee inflammation, you want the bottle you buy in July to have the exact same effect. Without standardized potency testing, one batch might be strong and the next might be totally useless.
The guide also mentioned performance under this section, specifically regarding tablets and capsules. What does performance mean in the context of a pill? It just sits there.
It sits there until you swallow it. Then it needs to act. This refers to dissolution testing. It's a fancy way of asking, does this pill actually dissolve in your stomach in the right amount of time?
As opposed to what?
As opposed to passing right through you.
Oh.
If a tablet is pressed too hard during manufacturing, literally compressed with too much mechanical force, it becomes like a brick. It might travel through your entire digestive tract without releasing any of those good curcuminoids. USP simulates the stomach environment to ensure the capsule breaks down and releases the payload right where your body can actually absorb it.
That would be the ultimate irony. You go out and buy the pure, potent, heavy metal-free turmeric, and you just poop it out whole because they press the pill too hard.
It happens, and USP verification prevents it.
So identity, purity, potency. It's like a 3-legged stool of quality. But the guide introduces a 4th element here that takes us out of the lab and onto the map: the supply chain.
This is the big picture context. We have to remember where this stuff comes from. It doesn't grow in a sterile lab.
The guide identifies India as the dominant source, right?
India is the massive player here, specifically regions like Kerala and Tamil Nadu. There is some supply from Southeast Asia and the Pacific, sure, but India is the heavyweight. But relying on a global supply chain brings real risks.
I imagine climate change is playing a role here.
Massive role. Climate variability affects everything. If the monsoons in India are delayed, or if there is a severe drought, the crop yield obviously suffers. But not just the yield, the potency suffers.
Really?
Stressed plants might produce lower levels of curcuminoids. So even if the farmer does everything perfectly right, the weather might degrade the product before it's even harvested.
And then you have geopolitics on top of that.
Exactly. Supply chain disruptions are very real. Shipping lanes, tariffs, labor shortages. The guide talks extensively about the importance of an auditable trail.
Auditable trail. That sounds like something my accountant asks for. What does it mean for a route?
In a way, it is accounting, but for physical goods. USB verification isn't just about testing the final pill in a bottle. It involves actually auditing the manufacturing facilities. They check for GMPs, good manufacturing practices.
So they are actually sending people to the factories halfway across the world.
Yes. They are looking at the factory floor. They are checking the water filtration systems. They are checking the air quality controls, the documentation logs.
So they're checking to make sure the factory isn't just some dirty shed, essentially.
Correct. They validate that the facility has the controls in place to prevent contamination before it even happens.
The guide mentions that for businesses like brands and contract manufacturers, such as Ingredientsage, this certification is a strategic asset.
That sounds a bit like business speak. What's the actual value for the company?
Risk reduction and speed. If you are a brand and you buy a USP certified ingredient, you have already done 90% of your homework. You drastically reduce your regulatory risk because the validation is already there. It speeds up your go-to-market timeline.
And the guide mentions something called being recall ready.
Yes. This is the nightmare scenario for any supplement company. Let's say a batch is flagged for some reason. Maybe a consumer gets sick, or a random spot test shows an issue. If you have USP certification, you have an ironclad paper trail. You know exactly which farm that lot came from, when it was processed, and where every single bottle went.
Traceability.
Traceability. Retailers love this. Big chains like Whole Foods or CVS, because it protects them. If you can't trace your product, a recall becomes a total disaster. You have to pull everything off the shelf everywhere. With traceability, you can surgically remove just the affected batch. It's interesting how this guide frames it from a business perspective, too. Brands use USP to protect their bottom line, but the side effect is that the consumer gets a vastly safer product.
It's a symbiotic relationship. Trust is the currency here. The brand buys trust through certification, and the consumer buys trust by purchasing the product.
Okay, let's pivot directly to you, the listener.
Yeah.
We've covered the molecular science, the mass spectrometry, the global logistics. Now let's get practical. You're standing in the supplement aisle at the grocery store. You're looking at 50 different orange bottles. They all look nice. What do? The guide gives us a consumer checklist.
It does, and it's very practical. Step 1, look for the mark.
The USP verified mark.
It's a specific logo. It's usually gold and green or black and yellow. It clearly says USP verified. Don't just look for the words quality tested or lab verified. Those are just marketing terms. You need to look for the actual seal.
Okay, step 2.
The number. Packaging that bears the USP mark typically includes a lot-specific or batch-specific verification number.
Wait, so every batch has its own unique ID?
Ideally, yes. And that leads directly to step 3, the database. You can actually go to the USP online database right on your phone.
There's a website for this.
There is. You can type in that number or the product name to verify it's legit. It confirms that the bottle in your hand is actually the one that passed all those tests we talked about.
That is wild. I can basically background check my vitamins right there in the aisle.
You absolutely can, and frankly, you should.
The guide also warns about red flags. What should we be avoiding at all costs?
Vague terminology. If a label says high-quality turmeric or pure sourcing, but offers zero documentation to back it up, treat it with extreme skepticism. Marketing is not science. Also, watch out for proprietary blends.
Oh, I see that a lot. Proprietary wellness blend.
It's often a sneaky way to hide low dosages. They list 5 great ingredients, but don't tell you how much of each is actually in there. It could be 99% filler. USP requires labeling integrity, which means listing the specific amounts.
And speaking of documentation, there was an acronym that kept popping up in the text, COA.
The Certificate of Analysis.
Now, this sounds like something a scientist would ask for, not me. Do I need a PhD to read a COA?
Not necessarily. Primarily. The COA is for businesses. If you are a brand buying turmeric to put in your capsules, you better demand a COA. It's the official document that lists all those test results we talked about. The lead levels, the mercury, the exact curcuminoid percentages.
But the guide suggests that consumers should know about it too.
Yes, because the standard for transparency is shifting. Some of the high-end brands are now putting QR codes directly on their bottles that link straight to the COA.
Oh, that's cool.
So you can scan the bottle and see the actual lab results for that specific batch you are holding. Knowing that a COA exists gives you insight into the level of detail required for true safety. It's like the Carfax for your supplements.
That is a perfect analogy. You wouldn't buy a used car without checking the history, so why put a mystery powder in your body without checking the COA? Before we wrap up, I want to quickly touch on the different formats mentioned in the guide. It distinguishes between powder, capsules, and extracts. Does USP cover all of them?
It does, but they serve different purposes. USP-certified powder is usually a bulk ingredient for formulators, the people actually making the consumer products. USP-certified capsules or tablets are what you and I usually buy, the finished, ready-to-take product.
And then there are USP-certified extracts or curcumin concentrates.
Those are the high-octane versions. Regular turmeric root powder might naturally contain 3 to 5% curcuminoids. An extract is processed to concentrate that up to 95%.
That is a huge difference in potency.
Massive difference. That's why verification for extracts is so absolutely critical. If you're using turmeric for a specific therapeutic reason, like serious joint inflammation, you need that high dosage. You need to know that the concentration is exactly what they claim it is, and not diluted with some cheap filler.
So whether you're a formulator mixing up a new blend or just someone trying to keep their joints happy, the standard remains exactly the same.
Identity, purity, potency, integrity. The pillars don't change.
It's amazing how much goes into that little capsule. We started this deep dive talking about a trendy latte, but we've ended up in high-tech labs with plasma, mass spectrometry, and global supply chain audits.
It really highlights the difference between an ingredient and a medicine. Turmeric is a root, yes, it's food. But when you process it, concentrate it, and put it in a pill to treat a condition, it becomes a product that needs strength verification. It crosses the line from food to supplement.
So to recap the journey, we have a root grown in India, maybe down in Kerala. It faces climate risks like droughts and potential soil contamination. It gets harvested. Then, if it's lucky, it goes through the USP gauntlet.
The gauntlet is a good word for it. The gauntlet of reference standards, the fingerprinting to prove it's not a fake, the gauntlet of ICP-MS to prove it's not toxic, and the gauntlet of potency testing to prove it actually works.
And finally, it gets that USP verified mark on the bottle, which tells you, the consumer, that the claims are actually true.
And in a world of total information overload, that third-party validation is really the only shortcut to trust we have. You can't run a mass spectrometry test in your kitchen. I don't care how good of a cook you are. You have to trust the standard.
Absolutely. It puts the power back in the hands of the buyer, provided they know what to look for.
Which hopefully they now do.
So here's where we leave you today. We've talked about the science, the risks, and the checklist. But I want to end with a thought from the expert side of things. We're looking at the future here.
You know, as I reflect on this guide and the state of the world, climate change impacting agriculture, supply chains getting more fragile, it raises a really provocative question. Right now, we look at USP verified or certified ingredients as a premium option, a nice to have if you want the absolute best.
You think that's changing?
I think we are rapidly heading toward a reality where verification isn't a luxury, it's the only safe option. As the environment becomes more volatile, the risk of contamination and adulteration goes up, not down. As supply gets tighter, the temptation to cheat increases.
That makes perfect sense.
So if you pick up a bottle that isn't willing to undergo this rigorous auditing, you really have to ask yourself, what does that brand know about their product that they don't want you to know? Why are they afraid of the librarian with the mass spectrometer?
That is a question worth asking every single time you reach for a supplement. Huge thanks to Laura and Fabian and Ingredientsage for this comprehensive guide. It really shined a light on the dark corners of the supplement industry.
Indeed. It's always better to know exactly what you're swallowing.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. Go check your medicine cabinets, look for that mark, and stay curious. We'll see you next time.